Is the Trump bump morphing into a Trump dump? That's a horrible image. This is the Moneymakers, and I'm Bruce Whitfield. Tonight we look at Donald Trump's plan from tax to infrastructure spend. We find out if markets are hedging their bets against the business president with Byron Lotter, portfolio manager at Vestact, and Viv Govender, who's a senior analyst at Lehumo Capital. Two guys, I suspect, when Donald Trump was appointed president of the United States, went long US because they thought this is the guy to deliver the future. Boy, you must be disappointed, Byron Lotter.
There's been so many wrongs in this whole situation. I mean,
what, just my introduction or the Trump presidency so far? Yes.
I mean, who would have thought that Trump would have won in the first place?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, you know, the market was falling as the polls were coming through, and then the market realized, hey, this guy's quite business friendly, and then the market turned, and then we saw this massive Trump bump that pushed through all through December, January. The market's been flying, and then of course now concerns that actually, like many people were saying in the first place, his crazy policies aren't ever going to go through the House, the Senate, and the courts, and that's what's happening now.
And that's the wonderful thing about a democracy that is sort of self-regulates. But what is it about markets that can't see logic at a time of hype? I mean, it happens all the time. Were you caught up by it?
Well, the problem is we long only, so we've enjoyed the benefit, but we're happy to have a pullback and use those opportunities to buy in again. The market does get greedy, but it's also, you know, you could sit there and watch it go from increase 10%
to 21 to 23 to 25,000.
And you could have jumped in halfway through that and still benefited. So, you know, when do you jump in? When do you jump out? But this is trader speak. This is far beyond my role.
Exactly. We don't talk about filth. Not here anyway. But I mean, what's your reading of where Donald Trump finds himself right now?
I think we've got to divide it into two parts. The parts that affect the market, the parts that don't affect the market. The immigration ban not really affects the market. Healthcare doesn't really affect the market except for the healthcare stocks. The stuff about the wall, unless he puts in place as well a tariff on things coming through, doesn't really affect the market. The bathroom bill doesn't really affect the market. The market cares about taxes, it cares about bringing money back to the thing. So in that way, the market is very logical, because the stuff he said about taxes, just look at, for instance, when he has that little kind of round table with the tech guys. On that table, there was $500 billion sitting overseas that would have been coming back basically with a 30-something% tax rate that now with Trump's plan comes back with a 10% tax rate. We're talking a couple $100 billion automatically given to these companies. With the stuff that he wants to do with the corporate tax rate, it just changes the P ratios for these companies dramatically. That's the only part the market cares about. The stuff he does with healthcare is only important in as much as it gives him the strength to push the tax stuff through. The market doesn't care. I mean, it's really, yes, it's 20 million Americans, but these 20 million Americans don't really make a difference to whether or not JP Morgan is higher or lower, or Google goes up or down. Those kind of things really don't play an impact on the market. And that's one of the reasons I think we've seen the market do so well, where most people that are involved in the market, I mean, including us probably, think that Trump is not a great human being, let alone a great president. But is he good for the market? If he pushes that plan through, he is.
But now you've got to say the markets don't care about all of those soft issues. But what markets do care about is the credibility of a political leader and whether or not they've got the political clout to drive through their ultimate agenda, which is the tax cutting agenda. Now, if you can't get through the basic stuff that you've promised in your presidential campaign, how good are you going to be at delivering that final promise? And that's surely why that stuff matters, Viv.
I think actually, you think the simple stuff, but healthcare is actually the most difficult thing, because there's no good option there except for paying more money to basically cover people that are not going to be profitable for anybody to cover. Okay, so you have to give them more money. This is all it is. The people that are uncovered in the US right now are the poor, the unhealthy, people with pre-existing conditions, and the only way to basically handle that is to give them more money. There's no easy, simple, better solution than that. You can't fix it away with some smart marketplace for insurance. You can't do anything besides just give them more money to take care of these unhealthy people. It's just a fact of life. And that is something that Paul Ryan doesn't want to do. That's something that the Freedom Caucus doesn't want to do, because they believe it's giving money from them. Sometimes people argue it's a racial thing. Sometimes they argue it's a class thing. How are we going to structure it? But giving money from the hardworking to the people that are slacking off in the economy, and they don't like to do that. And that's why it fell apart. But the question now arises, is that same friction going to happen with regards to taxes? I don't see them as being as problematic, because it kind of fits in more with what all Republicans want, to cut taxes. The problem is going to be the fact that now that he has the healthcare bill taken away, the healthcare bill was going to give a massive discount or massive savings to the taxes for the US. The new
so therefore it matters. I mean, and that's the point, Byron, because the moment I'm getting a benefit, a financial benefit, because I'm not paying for all these lame, sick and dead in the economy, I'm saving money there, therefore I can afford to give Viv a tax cut. Suddenly, actually, I have to keep funding Obamacare. I can't afford to give you the tax cut I want. I'm at risk then of defaulting on my promise to my very core electorate.
Well, that's the problem, because even within the brains trust of the tax cuts, there's no decisiveness. You know, Paul Ryan, Wilbur Ross, Stephen Mnuchin, the thoughts are that by August they will come up with a plan, but all of them are pulling in different directions of exactly which way to go. So obviously, if you're giving up some corporate taxes, you have to make it somewhere else. You have to implement certain spending cuts because, you know, there are fiscal conservatives out there that you need to please within, you know, the certain within the House and within the Senate. So it's extremely complicated. But I mean, essentially, when you look at the deep politics of US and how it all works, it's very hard to actually get much done, especially when there's people, even within the House at the moment, there's this conservative Tea Party, so to speak, that are sort of vandalizing and stopping any Republican agenda for their own agendas. And they're all supposed to be Republicans. So it's very complicated. And
it feels a bit like the African National Congress. I mean, it's ultimately self-destructive.
But you need the president, the leader, to be a unifier, someone who
feels like the African National Congress.
Exactly, yeah. Sounds all very familiar. But and unfortunately Trump is not that. He's actually the exact opposite, and that's why we're having so many people pulling in different directions.
As investors then, you know what you know what you don't know know what you don't know. That's Donald Rumsfeld. So what do you do?
I mean, I still think that there's still things he can do, which basically...
Well, no, what do you do? We know the environment is challenging. We know the environment is unpredictable, or maybe it's entirely predictable, just more of the same. So do you just continue as a South African investor with some rands, fewer dollars than you might have had a couple of weeks ago, and continue to diversify your portfolios, continue to buy American companies with decent growth prospects?
You must. I mean, as scary as the Americans are, we are scary at the moment. You know, I mean, most South Africans that are listening to the program right now are massively overinvested in South Africa, considering our risk profile and considering the options they have in other parts of the world. So almost every single person listening right now should be taking more money offshore than they have. It's just a fact of life. They have the house here, they have the pension here, they have 75% of their RA in this country. They have other properties, they're investing in properties, not just in this country, but probably the city they live in. You know, they definitely should be taking money into the country. Is the US the place to go? Probably yes. Where else in the world are you looking for real attractives right now? The S&P, yes, is the US, but it's also is Facebook, which is around the world. It's Amazon, which is around the world. It's Google, which is around the world. It's all these countries that are around the world, not just in the US. And that's probably the best place in the world to be in right now, even if the US itself is in a bit of an issue. Nowhere else looks much better.
Do you buy the index? Are you, because you say you buy the S&P, are you buying the index or are you stock picking within that index? Just clarify for me.
If I had to stock pick, I'd pick companies that have less exposure to the US, it's considering some of the stuff that might be happening right now. But if I had to have a choice, buy the index. The S&P is a great place to be.
What about you, Byron?
I agree with Viv 100%.
But you're going to buy the index.
No.
That's very
about the sort of offshore mentality.
Sure.
You know, I think there's great opportunities here, and we're still coming off a low base. But at the moment, it's a bit of a no-brainer. You've got the US economy, which is growing at 3%. We should be so lucky if we were growing at 3%. And this is in a more stable environment. It's currently the innovation hub of the world. You know, the Airbnbs, the Ubers, the Facebooks, you know, the Teslas. They're all coming out of the US. And like we've mentioned, they are not necessarily US businesses. They are going around and they're tapping growth in all these economies where they're seeing potential. So you're invested in the stable environment, yet the companies themselves are going out and accessing growth.
But you could argue that about the top 40 on the JSE.
They are doing that.
They're doing precisely that. You buy a Naspers, you own 1.7%. That was your figure of Tesla as a result of it. Thank you very much. What's the value of the Tesla stake for Naspers? Worth more than Wilson Bailey Homes.
10.3 billion rand. So Tesla's influence on the overall index now of the JSE index is bigger than Wilson Bailey Homes.
Elon Musk has got a foothold in South Africa, indirectly briefly, of course. But so the same argument can be made for investing in top 40 shares in the JSE, because that's precisely what they've been doing for the last 2 decades. They've been seeking great opportunity, and very successfully so elsewhere. Then it becomes a question of geography and currency as to where you want your money and what sort of denomination you want it in.
Yeah, but if you look at the JSE companies, I mean, yes, we have Naspers. That's pretty much the only tech company we have in this country. We don't have a Facebook.
But it's like a tech index.
A tech index.
So you can have a bigger allocation to Naspers.
Yeah, Naspers, but it goes through Tencent as well. And if you're worried about anywhere in the world, what I'd be the most nervous about is being in China in a tech company. Information in China is not exactly two things that go together very well. Okay, but pharmaceuticals and tech companies especially are not well represented in South Africa, and they are some of the biggest companies overseas which we just don't get access to. But also with our currency as well. I mean, if you look at what the currency has been doing over the last little while, when it was at 12.50, I was telling clients, no, get out of the country right now. It's a great time to take your money out, you know. Guys are saying, no, it's going to go to 12, it's going to go to 11. But the chance of it going to 11 are much, much smaller than the chance of it going to 15.
Sure.
You know what I mean? And that is the issue we have in this country at the moment.
But also we have this lovely issue in South Africa. When the rand-dollar exchange rate was 16, people were queuing up outside the bank to buy as many dollars as they possibly could. It comes down to 12, or from 25 to the pound, down to 15 to the pound. And people say, oh, it's going to get stronger. What is it in our psyche? Because you must be perceived with your private clients all the time, Byron. You phone your guys up and you say, you need to get yourself some Nike now. And I'm going to wait till it gets to 11, and then I'll fill my shoe dogs up.
It's so difficult to tell a client when the rand's at 15 and getting weaker that it's going to get stronger. You cannot even in your own head try and justify that, but then it does. You know, and there are periods and shifts and cycles. So we have just gone through, if you're comparing us to the US now, because that's where this conversation's going, where the local economy has been stagnant, the rand's been weakening, the US economy and the market has been doing well, and the dollar's been strengthening. So that's where all the momentum is shifting. I'm telling you now, there will be a period where the rand will be strengthening and our market will be doing well. And trying to time those are almost impossible. So I think the answer
you need to take your
have a bit of both.
Have your $100. Okay, so you got $100. You're living in South Africa. You're going to retire in South Africa. How much of that $100 every month am I taking and saying this should go to the United States, and how much of it should be staying here? It's $100 of disposable income.
I would say, and Viv made the same point, $70 to the US.
$70
because
so
your income and your property are already in South Africa.
Okay. So that's your hedge, $70, and you take it off to the United States. What about Europe? What about the independent United Kingdom of Great Britain and still Northern Ireland?
There's an argument to be made that emerging markets are actually incredibly cheap on historic levels. I think the last time they were this cheap versus the dollar, or versus the S&P was a while back. And I think the S&P right now, if you look at it, the US market itself, the last time it was this expensive on some like P ratio measurements was like 1929, which is like not a great time to be, as you may recall. I don't know if you will recall.
The bubble experts are saying we're in this bubble territory. We're in this bubble territory. They've been saying it for a year or two.
They've been saying it for 5-7 years.
But the problem is that like we were mentioning before, this is a new environment. Interest rates are lower, and interest rates obviously come into play when it comes to equity market valuations. So all your valuation numbers always you put in interest rates in there, and the lower they are, the higher the valuation is. And the second point is this. You have so much assets, or so many assets already stuck in this country, including your house, property, everything else, that putting the majority of your disposable assets out of the country actually makes sense.
Okay. So would you go with the 70-30 split?
Yeah.
There we go. At that point, we will leave it. Viv Govender, Senior Analyst at Lehumo Capital, and Byron Lotter, a Portfolio Manager at Vestact. Great conversation this evening. Other promises, hopes, dreams to be either made or shattered. Next time on the Moneymakers. Till then, bye-bye.